We are 22S Radio, the next wave of K-Beats. 22S Radio is 22smedia.com and 88.1 FM KKJZ HD3 Long Beach, Los Angeles. Now welcome everyone to the Golden Spotlight. At this time, I would like my guest to please introduce himself.
My name's Andy Hale. I'm an old geezer. I graduated 52 years ago here at Cal State Long Beach. And thank you, Rob, for asking me in to interview me. I'm not quite sure what you're going to ask me, but we will see.
Excellent, excellent. Now, the one thing I like to do when I have my guests is, to start off from the beginning. Tell me about, life growing up. Tell me about, the early years. What was K-12 like? Did you grow up with siblings?
All right. I was born New Year's Eve, 1941, in the middle of a blackout and a terrible rainstorm. My womb mate and I were born there. I'm a twin. I don't lisp. And that was up in Los Angeles, but my parents lived in Long Beach. We grew up in Long Beach. I attended schools there. Also, by the way, I'm a twin. We had 6 sets of twins in the neighborhood. We thought it was normal. Everyone else thought it was the water. As we grew up, the term those Hale twins became both a pronoun and an adjective. Just a great time, great place to grow up. Went to elementary schools there. Went to Southern California Military Academy for 3 years, first, second, third grade. All the guys in my family did, because my great-grandfather knew Dr. Brown, who had established that string of schools. And we got our fill of marching in those 3 years. I haven't marched since. I then went back to grade school, Bernie, Ellis in Bernie. I was there the first year it was open. Then I went to Washington Junior High School. It was a junior high school then. It was founded when there was only Poly High in town, so that goes way back. And had some wonderful memories there. Remember the first day I met some cute little girl who sat 2 seats behind me. She loathed me for 2 weeks because I called her Toots. Well, I did not know her name, and I was just too shy to ask. I found out it was not Toots. We have been married for 54 years now, so she forgave me. We then went to Poly High School, Long Beach Poly, and had a great time there. Had a great time growing up. Do you know what a vacant lot is? That's a lot in a development where they haven't built a house on. And where we lived over in the Wrigley district, that was, for eons, have been the riverbed for the LA River. And in vacant lots, they would grow weeds, big tall weeds, maybe 2-3 feet high. And do you know what a dirt clod fight is? Oh, you are socially deprived. You reach down and you grab a handful of weeds in that sandy loam and you jerk it up and you got a big club of weed roots and sandy soil. You took it and you threw it at someone. And that's what a dirt clod fight was. So we had a great time. I mentioned the Hale twins. That was, we were known, nothing, felonious. They had a great term in those days, all boy. It's a term that covered everything up to but excluding mayhem and treason. And so that all boy, and it was just acceptable. So I then went to Poly High School and was not a very good student until my senior year. I think I had 1 B. That was in business arithmetic. Then a couple things happened. My metal shop teacher came in one day and said, "Football practice starts today." And I was up, "Hale, get out there." I said, "All right." Okay, I'm 6'2", 190 pounds, and I played a couple years of Pop Warner football back when I was a young kid. Had a line coach that had played 20 years of Army football. Kept him out of combat in World War II, kept him out of combat in Korea. I can't remember his face except he looked like, as before face masks, he looked like someone who had gone to many hatchet fights without a hatchet. But great coach, very nice man. So I went out and I played football. My senior year was all A's and B's in classes like physics and that type of thing. And so then I went to Long Beach City College. Had no idea what I was going to do, just, but I knew I'd worked since I was 11 years old, and I knew I was not going to go to college. So I went there and took engineering. That's what they have. Math and science to me were fun, so I did that. Year and a half there, then I went up to Cal Poly. I was going to play football up there, but I ended up with 12 hours of laboratories and I think another 12 hours of class, and that ended my collegiate football career. Turns out very few college football players are engineers. I then, after a year and a half there, I came down to Long Beach State, and that's what it was in those days. It was Long Beach State College to major in physics, because they did not have a physics major up at Cal Poly. And I actually graduated with a degree in mathematics because I found that I was married and had a kid. I had to get a JOB, along with a BS and that type of thing. So I looked, and I had been taking math classes for fun. I just enjoyed them, and found out that, hot dog, if I changed to math, I could graduate a year earlier. So that's why I are a mathematician. And from there, I went out into the world. I wish I could say it was a well-ordered, planned career. It has not been. It's been a random walk.
So, everyone has that one subject usually that they either disliked or they just struggled with. What was that subject for you?
Chemistry. Chemistry. Bottle washing. It's just absolute bottle washing. Until you get to the quantum level. Once you get to the quantum level, it makes sense. But when I went to graduate here, I had to, my grad check, and I sat down, and the lady looked at it and said, well, you're supposed to have this 3-unit chemistry class for non-majors. You dropped it. You can't graduate. I said, oh, I said, well, tell you what, I'll make you a deal. I said, what? I said, I will trade you 3 units of upper division thermodynamics from the physics department, experimental optics, analytic mechanics, and thermodynamics, about 12, 15 units, for that 3-unit class. He said, that sounds like a wash to me, and she signed it on. But chemistry, I hated it. Up at Cal Poly, I had a chemistry class. I had, wasn't that good in the lab. Turns out in that class I had about the 5th highest grade out of about 3 sections, but I almost failed the lab. I was trying to, I killed all digestion of ox blood. Remember that. My instructor walked up and said, Mr. Hale, what are you doing? I told him, said, who told you to do it like that? And I mentioned one of the other faculty members, and he said under his breath, that damn alchemist. So anyway, that was my class. Other than that, I enjoyed it.
Some students, they'll go to class and they'll go straight home. Did you get the opportunity to participate in activities on campus?
Here, no. I worked. I went home and I was busy in my my church group and as a Boy Scout leader, but nothing here on campus.
Tell us about the importance of mentors and the mentors you had.
The what?
Mentors.
Mentors. That's interesting. I had no one in my life who was an engineer or a mathematician. I had a great set of mentors in the big downtown church I grew up in. I showed up there as a little black leather jacketed, long-haired hoodlum junior high kid because I had the hots for that cute little girl I told you about. And wonderful extended family. They took me in and nurtured me. And in Boy Scouts, we have a troop there. In fact, I'm still with the Boy Scout troop. We're the oldest troop in the country. The men I grew with in working with Scouts were men in my extended family. And they were the mentors. And it was not mentoring in mathematics or engineering, but mentoring in life. And they were very important. My wife and I are 76. We have 8 of those people who are in their 90s that are still in our life.
Tell us, for those that aren't familiar with, what is the Boy Scouts?
The Boy Scouts of America is a youth group. It is a, I'm trying to, there's a name for it, for character building. Yeah, if you look under, I think in the phone book, it's under character building. It was founded by a gentleman in England by the name of Lord Baden-Powell, who is a guy who defeated Shaka Zulu. But he started a program for boys to keep them off the streets and to learn scouting. And when he meant scouting, it was from his background as an Army officer. But we have now, throughout the United States and the world, it's a youth program that you learn many things. Character building is one of them, skills, life skills. We're going co-ed now. It has been co-ed from the older groups, 14 and above, for a good number of years. But starting this year, we are Cub Scouts are starting co-ed. And we found that throughout the country, a lot of scouting units were taking the whole families along, and they weren't covered by insurance. And so scouting said, well, we can either do 2 things, say, well, you can't do that because you don't have insurance, or we can change to do it. So they've changed. And next year, they will start with the older girls. And great change. As the father of 3 daughters, I think that's a great idea.
I know that when we see on TV and stuff, we see how there's things that the kids can win and stuff on the.
You don't win them, you earn them. And there's a great difference. Yes, the Eagle Award, which is the first achievement guys in our society can obtain that stays with them the rest of their life. If you're an eagle for. I was talking to last Thursday night at a dinner, and a gentleman who's 100 years old. He's the oldest eagle from Long Beach, and he is still an Eagle Scout. But all of the advancements in the Scout book, you go through Tenderfoot, second class, first class, Star, Life, and then Eagle, as I recall. And it's the interesting thing about it is the test for those items. They are built for boys to succeed or fail in small steps. And if I'm asking a boy a question for one of the advancements and he does not know the answer, right next to the question is the page number where the answer is. So go back, read it, and come back. And merit badges, you have to have, I think, 21 merit badges to become an Eagle. And there are many, many things. Spielberg got into movies by earning his movie merit badge. Many things that were not there when I was a boy. We did not have astronomics as a merit badge when I was a boy.
So tell us about the jobs that you held leading up to where you are today.
Oh my goodness. It was a random. I wish I could say, well, I went out to seek my fortune and I had my plan laid out. There's an old saying, man plans and God laughs. Let's see, before I graduated, I got a job at TRW Systems up in Redondo Beach in a group called Mass Properties. And that has to do with the weights, balancing, moments of inertia of things like spacecraft. And I worked there for 2 years. That's where I worked on the lunar excursion module. I kept records of how much it weighed, every nut and bolt, literally, on the puppy, and where they were so they can balance it correctly. Then also for the Apollo craft, I did the same thing there. I also later, we'll get into space station later, but I was there when the men landed on the moon. One of the most poignant experiences I ever had. Some of the people in our group had worked on the abort guidance system for the LEM, Lunar Excursion Module. That is, if the main guidance system pooped out on you, you went back to the backup guidance system. Well, there were about 20 of us sitting in a room, maybe 20 by 10, watching television when they were going to take off from the moon. And we really did not know whether it was going to take off. The probability was very high, but there was still a very finite probability that it would not. And we were sitting there watching, and Walter Cronkite did a great job as a newsman on that, the whole space program. And you could hear in the background chatter. And when you see in those control rooms, you see different control panels, people sitting there. And each one of those people are generally tracking one thing. And when something happens, they call out a code word. The only code word I remember is the one for when a rocket stages. It's PICO. We have PICO. I say again, we have PICO. We know things are going to separate. Well, the guys in our group that had worked on the abort guidance system knew all the code words, and all of a sudden they heard in the background someone call out a code word. And they jumped up, we knew what that code word was, and we all jumped up and started screaming. It was the code word that said the onboard computer had sensed an upward acceleration from the accelerometers on the LEM, which meant it was going up. And that only could happen if the rocket engine had fired. I have no idea what Walter said. We were too busy jumping up and down. That's one of the poignant memories I have. I also, by the way, kept the mass properties for the Minuteman II weapon system. Every missile in the fleet, including the hydrogen bombs that were on top of them. That's a different story from a different life. From there, I went to a company out in San Pedro called Logicon. It did a bunch of work on the radar range safety at Vandenberg Air Force Base. Worked on that for a number of years. I'll stop and you can ask me questions. That's,
Yeah, I mean, many of the different jobs that you've held, it's amazing. Tell us about, your interactions with astronauts.
I've met several. A number of them. When I was on the space station, I was back. This is back in Houston. They are a very, very interesting group of people. They're eclectic. They are well-read, well-rounded, good people, great technical people. And the first batch of them were primarily pilots, but then it grew into the other sciences. Very practical. I was sitting in a big meeting down in Houston. My specialty on the proposal for space station, I was in charge of all of the software aspect of system safety, reliability, maintainability, and quality. And the topic was hazards analysis and potential failures. And in a manned flight system, you have what is called a two-fault tolerance. You have to have three separate ways to provide any functionality that you must have. You can lose two of them and you still, okay. If you lose the third one, you're dead. Well, some guy in the audience was getting upset because whatever the system was that if we had two faults and the third one failed, what would happen? And a voice from the back of the room came out, in essence saying, some of us are going to die. That's the ground rules. This is a two-fault tolerance, not a three-fault tolerance. Get on with the meeting. She was one of the astronauts that was going to fly with this puppy. So they're very interesting people. By the way, they say when they speak to schools, the most often question is, how do you go to the bathroom in space? But the most popular place in orbit is the window. They say that you look out and the lights you see, we cannot capture by film or by tape. It is just phenomenal. It's people will just sit there, float there. By the way, when you're in a spacesuit, you're really not wearing it, you're floating in it. Very seldom do your feet touch, the soles of your feet touch the bottom, your boots, because you're floating. It's a self-contained little spaceship. Anyway.
I remember in first grade, it was like a big deal to us when our teacher all of a sudden showed us like this packet of the space food.
Yes. Yes, it has improved tremendously since those early days. A lot of things have improved quite a bit. By the way, they said when they took off on the Saturn V, that huge thing, the Apollo, when the rocket engine on the bottom is pushing up, and that puppy is about with the second stage, which they made right over here in Seal Beach. If you go over to the weapons station there at Seal Beach Boulevard, just south of there you see a big tall building with two great big bay doors. That's where the second stage for the Apollo program was made. They said that when it fired off, it would literally compress this 400-foot tall rocket assembly. Then all of a sudden, the rocket would spring forward, like compressing a spring. And it said it was like someone taking a baseball bat and smacking you right in the bottom.
And how long did you get to work with space shuttles?
With the space shuttle? Actually, the space shuttle, I did not a whole lot. I did a study for the first computers for the space shuttle. And people laughed when I said computers were going to be the size of a deck of cards. They thought I was nuts. But that was, I did some mass properties work on it also. But a former business partner of mine was Tom Kelly. A gentleman was in charge of all of the subcontracts on the space shuttle program. So had that connection.
Tell us about, seeing the evolution of, the computers.
Oh, my goodness. When I was a physics major here, there was one of the professors, I believe he is still an emeritus professor, Dr. George. I believe he's still with us. I had a class in experimental optics with him. And we used great big Frieden electromechanical calculators because we would use logarithms, and you would add and subtract logarithms to do your multiplication and division. Well, this thing, like, there's your answer. Well, my aunt had given me an abacus for Christmas because I was a math major. Well, it has 10 rows of beads on it. You're adding and subtracting 10 numbers. Well, I could do the adding and subtracting much faster with that. And some guys started teasing me about it in the lab one day, and I said, I will have you erase. Okay. I waxed them. I mean, it wasn't close. My abacus and I left them in our dust. In my pocket, I have hearing aids. I've taken them off for this. When I was a student, I worked at a place called Continental Can Company out in Terminal Island. It was so loud that if you were 3 feet away, you had to scream. They thought OSHA was a small city in Minnesota. I went home deaf the first day, so I wear hearing aids. My hearing aids now, each one of them, have more computational power than the Lunar Excursion Module and the Apollo craft did combined. Think about that for a moment. I remember, I grew up with computers. I started with paper tape and a teletype, punching and keying things in. My first computer, real computer I worked on, had 8K memory. That's not 8 megabytes. 8K, uh, 8,048, I think that would be the right number, of bytes of memory in it. And now, oh my goodness, where it is now. So I went through that process using, for example, airborne computers on the missile systems. That the memory actually was a spinning disk that had that you recorded the memory on as it came by, and went through my first computer with a disk on it was a two removable disks, and they had 250K memory on each of the platters. Now I have a small disk sitting on top of my computer at home that has 1 trillion bytes in it. It's changed just tremendously. We're now working at quantum computers, and that will be coming up soon, where we have using what we call quantum dots. Again, I go back to the example, the Egyptian hieroglyphic for 1,000,000 is a man standing there with both arms stretched up over his head and his mouth wide open just in amazement. And that's what I think when I see these things.
Yeah, I know that the younger generations, they're so accustomed to having something of handheld right away on there, but sometimes I think my little sister is too attached to electronics. You can't get her off the phone. And, with all the advancement of the different technology, I remember my sister making fun of me saying, how did you deal with stuff like that? Like, I couldn't believe that my sister didn't know what a floppy disk is.
Yes. When I go to summer camp each year with my Boy Scouts, have a rule. 2 things allowed with batteries: flashlights and the Scoutmaster's hearing aids. Oh, what about? Not a one of them has died of lack of things. But I have to be fair about that. In that I'm not an old fogey that, that's why in my day. I joke a lot about why in my day, we tethered our brontosauruses out behind the library. This is their norm. This is what they have been raised with. And our task is to make sure that though they have those technical things, which will always evolve, they must also be exposed to and learn the human things, the arts, that type of thing. When I was an engineering manager, hiring someone, 2 things would always put someone head and shoulders above anyone else. One, if they were an Eagle Scout, and second, if they had a good background in the arts.
And when did you reach the decision where, you knew for sure what career you wanted?
Well, when I was a senior in college, I decided finally that I was not going to become a United Methodist preacher. So I became a rocket scientist, and I got the best of both worlds. I've had an inner city Boy Scout ministry for 59 years. By the way, I've been with them for 59 years. We have a gentleman in our troop who has been with us since 1945. He just got his 70-year pin. But so I decided that I was not going to be a minister when my senior year of college. And then I went out to seek my fortune, and it found me. The pastoral part is still with my scouting. So I as I said, I had the best of both worlds. Gee whiz, who got to do things like that? My grandmothers both moved to Texas in the late 1880s. And my mother's mom, the last real good conversation I had with her was in her backyard with a neighbor who was her age, had known me all my life. And my grandmother was talking about the fact that her stepfather was a foreman on a 1,000,000-acre ranch in Texas. And each year he would tour the whole ranch by buckboard. Those are those wagons with 4 wheels. They were the pickup trucks of back then. He would be gone a month to tour the whole ranch. We then changed the topic. We started talking about the fact that I had just helped put a man on the moon. I grew up with people whose fathers fought in the United States Civil War. And I put a man on the moon. And more has happened in my lifetime than any generation in the history of the world. And it is just really mind-boggling at times. Some things have not changed, though. The human condition has not changed. And that never will.
What would you like your legacy to be?
Oh, he was a good man. A good friend of mine died not too long ago, and there were eulogies going about. And I just thought, I'd known the man for decades and been a very close friend. And when it came my turn, the only thing I could say was just, he was a good man. And I've tried to be a good father, good daddy. There's a difference between daddy and father. I have 3 daughters who are my birth daughters. They call me daddy, and a number of the women that they grew up with call me daddy also. Our house was always the safe house. And and a good husband. I've been so blessed to have a life partner who is my intellectual superior. We have all of our letters from when we were away from one another in college for a 3-year period. She was up at College at Pacific and then Berkeley, and then I went up to Cal Poly. One of her letters when she was at Berkeley, she hated Berkeley, but the letter said, my physics professor came in late today. By the way, my wife is a retired kindergarten teacher. So back to the letter. It said, my physics professor came in late today, and he apologized. He said, I just received the Nobel Prize in physics. But I joked, but I'm the rocket scientist in the family. So those are, I guess, what I would hope to be remembered by.
I usually always ask my guests, where do they see themselves after retirement?
Oh, all right, well, hopefully I'm going to retire sometime this year. I was kind of retired, then a friend called me about 3 years ago, someone I'd worked with a number of years ago in a very interesting company, built upon technology that our founder stole from the Russians when he worked for the CIA. But that's another episode. So I've been working on this for about 3 years, called Earthstar Energy Canada. We do high-tech solar energy and high-tech cabling, power and optical fiber, and LED lighting. And after 3 years, it looks like the company is starting, 2 parts of them are profitable. I'm going to be able to retire, quote unquote, later this year. And I'm going to do a couple things. One, I've already talked to the Dean of the School of Natural Sciences and Mathematics. I'm going to come back and work on my master's degree in mathematical physics because I just love it. I just love it. And I'm going to do some blacksmithing in the art department. And that cute little girl and I are going to do some traveling and just enjoy. I never will totally stop.
What tips do you have for people who, they're still debating what they want to do in life? They still haven't made up their mind.
You will have probably 3 separate occupations. A little background. I'm on campus all the time. I live within walking distance. And this is my thinking place. There are rooms on this campus in the business department and such that I've been sitting down there doing work, although classes were there, for over 50 years. That's my thinking place. And I love talking to the students. I'm looking at a gentleman now. I met him. We were waiting for an elevator here in the student union. I talked to them about what they're going to do, I always ask them what their majors were. Then I said, I graduated 52 years ago. I remember when it was a sheep ranch, which I do, by the way. The last flock of sheep were run in around 1965 on the south side of 7th Street. But you will have probably 5 or 3 totally different occupations in your life, maybe 20 jobs. And the task will be to prepare yourself for one of those and for life. And you will never stop going to school. You'll never stop learning. And each job will build skills that you will be the gestalt of everything you have done. And the next job you have you'll say, son of a gun, that last job I had with all that other stuff, oh, here's an opportunity. I will do that. And there are some things, basically, I tell students, writing, public speaking. I have a speech minor. I grew up in a family of storytellers. For me, talking to one person or 5,000 is like eating a ham sandwich. And just, but most people, that's not true. And I understand that. To prepare for your life, there's some very interesting research just came out about being happy. And being happy is not reaching destinations, but it is always having another destination that you are reaching for. And so I guess that's it. Life is a journey. And Annie Mame, the movie, the play, Annie Mame has a line in there, and she says, life is a banquet, and most poor blippity-blip are out there starving to death. And enjoy life. If you don't like what you're doing, do something else.
So tell us, how did you reach the decision about, minoring in speech? Were you debating on any other topics?
Oh, let me tell you. 8th grade, Mr. Higgins' social studies class. Mr. Higgins stood up and said, okay, oral book reports. Hale, you're up. I hadn't read a book. I was sitting in the back row of my black leather jacket and my long hair, and so I got up and I started walking towards the front of the room and figuring something would happen. If I got lucky, I'd drop dead. But I got up to the front of the room and I sat down at the table. Up there, one leg kind of up and my butt on the table, another foot on the floor, and I looked at every kid in the room at a time. I didn't say a word. I looked at each one of them, and then I said, it was so cold that winter that the snow turned blue. And I told the story of Paul Bunyan and his blue ox, Babe. Well, the reason Babe was blue was she was born in the winter of the blue snow. It was so cold the snow turned blue, and she never got warmed up. Well, I finished, and I got up, and I started walking back to my desk. And Mr. Higgins started, did you see how prepared he was? He didn't need notes. My goodness. And I'm walking back, and I say, Self? It says, yeah. So I think we found something here. I said, I think we have, yeah. So that was the beginning of my public speaking. And I took public speaking in high school. And as I said, to me, speaking to one person or 5,000, I've done both, is like eating a ham sandwich. I enjoy it. I just love the interface between a speaker and the audience. The things you need to be very careful. Humor, 9 times out of 10, if you try to do something humorous, there's a very good chance that something will go wrong, so you got to be careful about that. You need to know what you're going to say. Anyway, that's. I even have a 3-unit class in storytelling. That was the last class I needed to get my Bachelor of Science in Mathematics. And you better believe I took a lot of ribbing about that at TRW. Our division manager made sure everyone knew that the last class I took to get my degree was storytelling. Then he said, well, that'll fit in well writing proposals.
So, tell us about, your earliest memories also when, we were mentioning about computers. What were your thoughts when you saw PCs versus, Apple?
Oh my goodness, when I saw a First question, someone said, why would anyone want a computer on their desk? uh, at that time in my career, when you were a programmer in those days, they also gave you a set of tools, screwdrivers and stuff like this, because it was just guaranteed you were going to have to get in there and do a little bit of monkeying around with that. As I saw them grow, it was extremely interesting. That time in my career, I was actually in the computer design and manufacturing business for a while, and I could see the technology growing, and each couple of years, it would just increase a factor of 10. And I was also fortunate in that I saw three aspects of it. I was involved in the technical aspect of it, the software, and also the use in the business. One of the jobs I had for a company called Basic 4, who are no longer in business, I chaired all of the womb to tomb committees for each of the product lines. And my task was to herd the product along through its life cycle. So I got to see all aspects of it. And it was a multidimensional view of the industry. And very interesting seeing how it grew to what we call mini computers in those days. And you'd pay $100,000 for one of those puppies. And this was back, 30 years ago, which I'm not sure what the equivalent constant dollars would be now, but they're not something that hobbyists have. Then the first hobbyist came out, the Z80 chip. I haven't thought of that for years. I can't remember who made the Z80 chip. It was a computer chip. It was an inexpensive computer chip. And Radio Shack and other companies started selling kits that you could build a computer built upon that chip. And it was just so interesting as I look back upon it. Just knowing that you're standing on the crest of a wave that isn't going to break. It's like, I guess, catching a surfer catching a wave that takes you on for miles and miles, because the wave never broke, but you were riding that crest and seeing not only the technology, the business aspect, but seeing how this technology was changing our world and changing it in ways that you'd never go back. I remember once a friend of mine, I was over at his house, and he told his 5-year-old son, hey, take Mr. Hale over and show him how the computer works. So this is while I was working at Basic 4, and the kid, now an adult, took me over and started the computer up. Said, this is how, let me boot it up and this. And I thought, a 5-year-old's doing this. Thinking, okay, it's really here. But yeah, amazing.
And how can people contact you?
Oh, how can they contact me? Well, my email is andylhale at, let me give you one that's better too. andylhale.respond@gmail.com. That's ANDYLHALE dot, and the word respond, @gmail.com.
I always ask my guests, I like to think that somebody could be listening that it turns out the specific guest I have was in the specific career or pursued the exact degrees that the audience member may be listening to. What tips do you have for someone that wants to follow in your footsteps?
Okay, it is not a single thread. One, you need to take mathematics, and you treat mathematics like a language. Learn the vocabulary. The rest of it will come along. Then you learn basic physics, and then that will be the foundation for all types of engineering. The next thing you need to do is you need to know how to write. When I was in college, I only wrote 2 term papers. I'm dyslexic, I'm ADD. We didn't know about those things in that time. But to me, math and physics was like reading a comic book. When I retired, I was a professional writer. I'd knock out 50, 60-page technical documents in a week, part-time. So learn how to write. The other is learn how to speak. And read about the world, read about what people in these industries do, where the jobs are. What are you going to do to earn money to buy shoes for the baby? And what are you going to do after that job goes away? Because we are now in a world where the halftime of technical skills are measured, in maybe 5 years. So and again, I said before, make sure your life is filled with the arts, because that gives you creativity. There's a book. I don't go around recommending books, but there's a book by a guy named Keith Ferrazzi. Never Eat Alone is the name of the book. Never Eat Alone. And it's not one of these, it's about relationships. And it is not about, these soft, warm fuzzies. It's about building relationships in your life and keeping track of them. Bill Clinton, when he was in high school, started filling out every day a 3x5 card of everybody he met. He still has those for everybody he's known since he was in high school. And it's a great book, it's an easy read, and it explains that process. 2 rules. One, if someone comes to you and asks you for a favor, do you know someone who could help me with such and such? If you can do it, you do it. Rule number 2, you never keep score. But never eat alone. By the way, there's a chapter in there entitled Never Eat Alone, and below it is a little caption, read whatever the date was, while eating alone at Denny's. My wife was on a weekend church retreat. But relationships. As I said, I played football at Long Beach Poly High School. I was one of the 4. Football players are 2 kind. Long Beach Poly Jackrabbits and those that wish they were. But anyway, our high school coach, Dave Levy, went into the NFL, and when he was introduced to the Hall of Fame at Long Beach City College, he was introduced as a man who had coached for 50 years, most of it in the NFL, and had never been fired. And Dave walked up to the podium and he looked out at the crowd and very softly said, "It is all about relationships. And your profession is about relationships. Ethics, you must have high ethics. Don't let any, there are, just like geometry, there are no royal roads to success. And they'll say, be kind to the people on the way up because you'll meet them on your way down. Always be kind to people." Good.
Well, we are down to our final 2 minutes, but I want to say that, I love, getting people's stories, it's the whole theme of the show, and it's been interesting because you're the second guest. Last week, I had a guest who also, it turns out that he had, learning disabilities, sort of have in common with my guest has been really interesting. Like I said, I couldn't do math, as I mentioned before we're doing the show, and the university decided to give me an opportunity to pursue my degree here. So it is fascinating to know that you shouldn't have something like a learning disability stop you from achieving your goals.
Yes. The thing, you can do anything you want. Well, I'm 6'2". I'm now down to my high school weight of 200 pounds. I've been 235 for years. I could never be a jockey. So when they say you can do anything you want, and you need to tell kids this. You put it in that contacts, but yeah. And hasn't she grown to be a beautiful campus, our school here, yes.
I never realized how many name changes it had either.
Long Beach State College, California State College at Long Beach, and California State University. I think there's another one in there, but I'll look at the coffee cups at my house.
Well, thank you for taking the time to be here on the Golden Spotlight.
Thank you for asking me.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes this episode. Remember, you can always tune in to robfloresmedia.wordpress.com if you missed the episode. Thank you so much. Until next time, folks.